Disney is very good at what they do. I know, but hear me out. Disney is one of the best, if not the best, at pretty much everything they put their hands on. Movies, TV, tours, merchandise, cruises, buying other companies, corporate integration, streaming, and of course, theme parks. When Disney is firing on all cylinders, they can create some truly amazing theme park experiences. But if you go to the most recent article of your favorite Disney news site, you're pretty much guaranteed to find several comments about how the parks have lost their magic, about how things were so much better in insert decade here, and that CEO Bob Chapek needs to be fired because he doesn't know how to run the parks. All these comments boil down to one thing: commercials. Okay, technically it's much more nuanced, and that's really more about cost cutting and company priorities and the reduction of the layer of pixie dust that covers all the corporate stuff, but that's not the point. It's pretty dramatic, okay? The relationship between Disney and money isn't a new one, though. Paul Presley shut down the Main Street Electrical Parade because it was too expensive to run. The Disneyland Paris Indiana Jones roller coaster is not part of a massive themed land because it would have cost too much to do, which is a far cry from Walt Disney mortgaging his house for Disney. So things have been changing for a while. The Walt Disney Studios was known for innovation. They started with short cartoons, moved into some of the first feature-length cartoons, and eventually into live action. Along the way, they pioneered things like the multi-plane camera to give depth to cartoons, and the integration of cartoons with live action. But Walt Disney wasn't satisfied with his success. He had bigger ideas. The story goes that he was sitting on a park bench watching his daughters on the carousel, and he thought that there should be a place where the entire family could enjoy themselves. Looking to a plot of land across the street from his studio, his idea for a Mickey Mouse park was born. But the ideas soon outgrew that strip of land, and it kept growing and growing and growing until it became Disneyland. Despite a chaotic opening day with way too many people, Disneyland quickly became an entertainment juggernaut, selling out and getting people from all over the world wanting to come. But, as is the case with everything, Walt Disney wasn't satisfied. So he bought some orange groves in Orlando, Florida, under a bunch of aliases to keep the price down, and he started to develop his Florida project, a successor to Disneyland, bigger, more advanced, and more ambitious. This wouldn't be a Disneyland 2.0, it would be a new theme park, and a city of the future. Epcot, the experimental prototype community of tomorrow, was to be a city of innovation, where all those living there would hope to create new things. But Walt Disney died before he could see this project fulfilled, and his brother Roy took on the job of trying to put it all together. And while what eventually opened wasn't a city, it was still pretty cool, with a whole 22 attractions, but they had the benefit of size, and they had plenty of new ideas still to come. Disney did deliver on Epcot in 1982, just not as Walt Disney imagined it. Instead of being a functioning city of the future, it became another theme park. The first non-Magic Kingdom Disney theme park to open thus far, celebrating the future and industry, and also some countries of the world. The theme of this park was a little bit confusing, and honestly, still is, but there was now more to do in Walt Disney World than ever before. At least until 1989, when Disney created MGM Studios Park in agreement with the film company of the same name to celebrate the magic of movie making. And then, 10 years later, Animal Kingdom would arrive as an exploration of, well, animals. In between these openings, Disney added 20 new hotels to their original two, based on everything from the wilderness, to the decades, to their classic cartoons. They would open a water park named Typhoon Lagoon, and later another called Blizzard Beach. If you wanted non-Disney merchandise, food, and entertainment while you were on vacation, you could go to Downtown Disney starting in 1989, remodeled as Disney Springs in 2015. And, if you wanted to get around the resort easier, you could hop on the new Skyliner starting in 2019. Also in 2019, Disney announced a massive overhaul to Epcot to try to make it more cohesive and more unified. It didn't do much to make the theme any less confusing, but at least they're trying. For all intents and purposes, Disney seems to be consistently bringing new experiences to the resort just because the guests want it. So what's the problem? Well, let's take a look at some of the other things Disney has added to the experience. The company would introduce Disney Vacation Club in 1991 to give perks to those staying more frequently, which is great, unless you're not staying more frequently. Not everyone is getting the ultimate experience, which had always been true to some extent. I mean, you started out in Disneyland having to buy different ticket books, but the changes increased when Disney started building things specifically and exclusively for DVC members. FastPass would be added to the parks with intention to reduce wait times for certain attractions, but ultimately messed everything up. Well, I couldn't possibly describe the whole history of FastPass in this video. Defunctland has a great documentary on the subject that I'll link below. In short, while the idea of removing some people from the main line works in theory, the original FastPass just made it a race to see who could get their hands on a piece of paper to determine which lines they'd be in. But overall wait times actually went up due to all the crowding. FastPass Plus tried to address this, but actually made it worse by turning it into a competition to see who could plan the best and the farthest ahead. To do this planning, Disney brought in the My Disney Experience app in 2012 so you can plan your trip ahead of time and with more ease. In theory. In practice, it just turned the build-up to your trip into a mess of over-planning and trying to figure out exactly which fast passes you want to have, and then trying to plan which others you would get after you would use those based on the hypothetical availability. But you couldn't book those in advance. You had to either keep refreshing your phone while you were in the parks, or go to these weird kiosks that never actually worked. It was just a mess. And this really only got worse once they introduced boarding groups of things like Rise of the Resistance. I was eating lunch in the Hollywood Ground Derby restaurant one day, which isn't exactly cheap, but it was silent in there because everybody was staring at their phones to try to get a boarding group for Rise of the Resistance. That's one ride. What? How? Anyway, with this new system came magic bands to check into fast passes, enter rooms, pay for things, and more. And while much has been said about the idea of you giving Disney your credit card number to make paying for things so very easy, the real draw was that it took care of a lot of things, and you didn't have to carry nearly as many things with you. But then, if you didn't want to use the magic band, your vacation became harder. We're going to come back to this in the solution. Keep that in mind. In 2008, Disney renamed MGM Studios to Hollywood Studios as they broke ties with the park's former namesake. But the change didn't really mean much, with only around 5 attractions actually having to do with the film production theme, left among a sea of Disney IP-based attractions. A far cry from a park opening as a functioning studio with a tour and a couple of rides. Honestly, Disney's idea of being Hollywood and Florida to rival Universal Studios Orlando just didn't work, and so they slowly changed it until they realized that it was too far gone to salvage it. The announcement of Toy Story Land, Star Wars Launch Bay, and Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in 2018, 2015, and 2019, respectively, sealed its fate as now a celebration of Hollywood, rather than a look inside it, which leaves the most confusing theming ever. You're in old Hollywood, except for these couple sound stages, except for the giant 20-foot-tall Woody statue that's just randomly there. It really doesn't make any sense, and so it leads to a very confusing park identity. Actually, keep that in mind too, that's also a very important part of fixing this. I actually think this whole thing can be summarized with one single part of Magic Kingdom. Disney announced in 2013 that fans of the smash hit Tangled would finally get an area themed to the movie in the Magic Kingdom. Some bathrooms. And everybody's response was, huh? Bathrooms? Okay? And Disney seems fine with this. Like, they're really good bathrooms, but that's all. Frozen gets all of the Norway Pavilion, and a whole event in Hollywood Studios that blocked the full icon, well, the half icon. It's a part-time icon of the park, and Tangled gets some bathrooms. It may seem like I'm nitpicking, and I am, but Disney did us a favor and removed pretty much all ambiguity as to their goals when they reopened after the pandemic. The Disney parks closing was, for a lot of people, one of the starkest indicators of what was going on. Disney is a juggernaut, and them closing meant more to some people than schools or restaurants. And so a lot of fans, myself included, watched eagerly as they reopened. But we all noticed something pretty quickly. It wasn't going to go back to the way it was before. Disney had been making some changes. One of the biggest things is that in addition to booking your tickets, you now need to also make a reservation to the park you're going to. They won't let you in without one. And if you want to hop to another park, you can't until 2 p.m. That drastically changes the way the vacation works in terms of how you structure your day. Extra magic hours are gone. On-property resort guests used to be able to either enter the parks an hour early or leave an hour late. And now, well, sometimes they give you half an hour. FastPass is dead, replaced with a really complicated system that, well, basically just removes FastPass unless you pay for it. But even then, there are some attractions that aren't included with that. You have to pay even more for an individual FastPass for that attraction. And some of the attractions that are included with Genie Plus never have more than like a 5-minute wait. So I think the irony of this is that this basically means that Disney saw that lines were getting too long, and their long-term response was to make lines longer and make people pay more if they didn't want their wait times to increase, which is the opposite of how FastPass is supposed to work. And Disney also shut down the Magical Express transportation from the airport to the hotels, so now there's no official Disney way to get to the resort. I mean, I guess they're technically suggesting you use that mirror shuttle, but Jake Williams from Bright Sun Films did an interview with Disney Dan where they talked about this, and they're making a good point.
The idea of building hotels on property, the whole point of it was to keep people in the atmosphere of Disney, right? So the Magical Express was sort of the companion piece to that. The fact that it was free was like even a bigger incentive for people who are landing in Orlando to get on the bus and go there. Now, without Magical Express, I think you're going to see a lot more higher-end hotels, bigger companies come in and capitalize on the fact that the bubble doesn't exist anymore.
I mean, yeah. Disney removed the free element of FastPass, is making you pay for magic bands, and just in general is removing a lot of the small things that make it feel so magical because they're recovering from the pandemic, or as they say in the interview.
Disney has been offloading so many things right now in the name of COVID, right? You know, they have all these expenditures that aren't benefiting them directly. So we'll use the excuse of COVID to get rid of them.
Forbes described in their article, looking back at 50 years of Walt Disney World history and business strategy, that, quote, at Disney parks around the world, the element of the show is carefully done. The show is everything that the guests can see or experience inside the parks. Since opening in 1971, Walt Disney World has continued to expand and change the show from the moment guests first arrive at Walt Disney World to the moment they leave. And while that's still true, the company's focus seems to be shifting from that show to something else. The dollars. As an extension of Galaxy's Edge, Disney announced a new themed hotel, and they spoke pretty highly of it in that same Forbes interview. Looking to the future, hotel experiences like Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser will set a new precedent in what a hotel can be. The 2-night vacation experience will fully bring guests into the world of Star Wars, with highly themed rooms, tasks to undertake while on board the Halcyon, and even a shore excursion to Batuu at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at Disney's Hollywood Studios. We're hard-pressed to even try qualifying it as a hotel. It's really elevating the concept of placemaking in groundbreaking ways that are so much more than just accommodations. And yeah, it's really cool. Spoilers for Galactic Star Cruiser, if that matters to you. Although, the fact that I can say spoiler alert for a hotel means that they're doing something right. Look at it. It's so cool. It's also $6,000 for 4 people, and some people are accusing Disney of making something mediocre with a huge price tag just to draw in the Star Wars fan base. Is the hotel worth the cost? Would people be less upset if it were priced lower? I don't know. But I think this whole thing can be summarized by something that offhand Disney said when those mini Disney stores and some Targets were announced.
This part of the show really took away from the magic of the Disney parks and exposed the kind of greedy merchandising part of Disney that we all know is there, but we all kind of turn a blind eye to.
We all know that Disney is a company and they're trying to make money, but their goal is to make money via making their guests happy. So we all just kind of ignore the fact that they're trying to get our dollars and are satisfied with the entertainment. It's kind of like a movie theater. Coincidentally enough, something else Disney is very good at. The Walt Disney Company is a projector. All it wants to do is be on and project. We are the audience. We're looking at the screen, we want to see a movie. In theory, everyone's happy. The projector is projecting, the audience sees the movie. But what you've seen gradually, and even faster since COVID, is that the projector is slowly starting to get misaligned. So, the projector is still projecting, but it's over on the wall instead of on the screen. Now we're looking at the screen, trying to watch, but it's not there anymore. And I think that's where you're getting so much varied response to this. The shareholders and the executives, all the people that are writing the press releases, are perfectly fine with it being projected on the wall, as long as it's still being projected. Some people are happy with it on the screen, but are upset now because, well, I'm looking at the screen and I can't see a part of the movie. And some people weren't even happy before, with the land based on a non-Disney property, and then putting a Starbucks in Main Street, so they're even more upset as they drift even further away. Ultimately, Disney's happy, but no one else is. But they also know that people will still keep coming anyway. People begged for a Tangled theme area, and Disney gave them the most heavily themed bathrooms. And Disney is okay with it, because the projector is still running. Now, in case this is all sounding super negative, I should reiterate that I love the Disney parks, specifically Disney World. I've been there several times, and some of my favorite memories are there. It's one of my favorite places to go, and in my opinion, Disney is still far and away the best out of any theme park. Galaxy's Edge, Toy Story Land, Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Hollywood Studios, Animal Kingdom, the hotels, Disney Springs, they're all really great, and I really do love them. And I can't wait to see how they keep growing. But we increasingly appear to be at a crossroads. Disney is going to keep doing things that make them money, whether it makes the guests happy or not, and the guests will keep coming because it's still worth it to most of them. Myself included, no judgment. So how is this going to end? Is Disney just going to keep increasing prices and removing benefits just because they can? I don't think so. Here's why. Disney currently has the highest market share in the US theme park industry, by a pretty large margin. But they're not invincible. Universal is pretty big. A lot of their competitors are pretty big. And Disney knows that. Galaxy's Edge was a direct response to Universal's Wizarding World of Harry Potter. And things like the Galactic Star Cruiser, however expensive it is, shows that they are still willing to make new things, and better things. They could have just made a Star Wars themed hotel, but they didn't. They made it elevated. That means something. It's likely that the concept of the show is shrinking. It's becoming less immersive, and it's becoming more expensive. Will it stay that way? I don't know. But I think it's important to remember that the profits are their main goal. So when they announce a price hike, or the paid replacement of your favorite free service, that's just going to happen. Doesn't mean you have to like it, but that's their business. But that also doesn't mean that the writers, Imagineers, actors, sculptors, and cast members aren't doing some really, really cool work. I think that what Disney has is a solvable PR problem, at least in the short term. The projector may be permanently misaligned. Maybe we'll move the screen, maybe we won't. That's up to each person that walks in that theater. But maybe Disney could put the screens a little bit closer. It won't be easy to fix all this, but it's doable. How? Well, that's a topic for part 2 of this video, next week. stay tuned. But it might look something like this.
Of course, this is a big, exciting project for us too, you know. I mean, in fact, it's the biggest thing we've ever tackled.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this look at the intersection of Disney and money. It's a complicated story. If you want, like, comment, share, subscribe, all the things. It's really helpful for me to help you to know you like it and to show you more stuff like this. Part 2 of this video is coming next week, where I try to give Disney a couple in-depth, comprehensive strategies for the next steps on how to get back in the good graces of the guests. Alliteration is awesome. Until then, have a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. I'll see you next week.